So
right?
are there
And they're
certain
for that.
kinds of veterans that your organization attract? Or to put it sort of in a negative way, are there people who are getting missed by what you're doing?
I think that, I mean, what we found is that the Mission Continues model works for veterans across the spectrum. Mm-hmm. The people who are missing right now is that, unfortunately, and this speaks to a larger problem, is that we have right now a dominant paradigm in the country, which is unfortunately reinforced oftentimes by the VA approach to disability, where you often have veterans who are encouraged to think of themselves as disabled. And we've actually built a program in the country and a mindset that actually encourages veterans to think of themselves not just as initially disabled, but as permanently disabled. Mm-hmm. And what you find is that a lot of veterans who've actually been caught in that system for too long, I would say, are probably the ones who have the hardest time actually transitioning out of it. You know, you got to think to yourself, all right, you're a 23-year-old Marine, you're serving in Afghanistan. Right? And then maybe you come back and maybe you were shot or you're hit by an improvised explosive device. You come back and you spent your whole life taking on challenges, doing things, and then all of a sudden people come to you and they're like, hey man, you need a gift basket or a blanket, right? Or, well, what can I do for you? Sometimes they're literally wanting to hand people cash. And then you have a system, again, some wonderful doctors and nurses in the VA, but you have a disability system which also comes to people and say, listen, you're disabled and you're going to be so for the rest of your life. So what we're going to do is we're going to start paying you every month. Right? And that's kind of the approach that's put in. And we found that oftentimes people who've been part of that system for too long, right, it's hard for us. We come in with a very countercultural message, which is to say, we expect something of you. We're going to veterans and we're challenging them. We're saying you still have something to offer. And the connection that they feel to us is that we're often the first people who come to them and ask something of them. See, it's not good enough that you're watching TV all day long. We expect you to find a way to be able to serve. And so I think that it works for everybody. I think that the hardest group for us sometimes are people who've been trapped into this larger system, which can often encourage dependency.
And I know that Carl Zinsmeister and Thomas Meyer and others at the Philanthropy Roundtable are very concerned about this issue of disability. Yes. 45% of veterans today's veterans are applying for disability compensation. And it's not necessarily their fault, it is the system. I just wanted to get your impression of the disability system and whether you agree with Eric and on its negative effects.
I'll try to get through this without cursing.
Oh, go ahead.
I was an enlisted
We're in
Marine
Utah.
after all. No, you know, Eric hit the nail on the head. The system's broken. I was explaining a situation I went through at my table before coming up here, where when I was transitioning out of the Marine Corps, you had to go through this thing called the Transition Assistance Program. And it was about 45 Marines from far-flung units within our division, you know, guys that were in the supply corps, logisticians, cooks, and infantry guys like myself. And, you know, there was a resume writing portion of it. There was, you know, different various transition portions of it. But at one point, a representative from one of these large organizations, nonprofit organizations, gets up and he says, you know, points at the first gentleman. He says, "What'd you do in the Marine Corps?" The guy says, "I was a supply officer." He goes, "Okay, you got a bad back. I can get you 20% for that. Did you ever go out on a convoy in Iraq?" "Yes." "Fantastic. I can get you an extra 20% for PTSD. You, young woman, what'd you do?" "Oh, I was an admin clerk." "You got carpal tunnel syndrome. That's an easy 10. You ever fire at a rifle at the rifle range?" "Great, you got tinnitus in your ear, that's an extra 10%. You can get 20% for the rest of your life." And this went on and on and on until he had gotten enough of a cross-section of different jobs within the military and explained the types of examples that they could go in and get rubber stamped out of the system. And you know, this creates two obvious problems. The first is economic. That's unsustainable, okay? I mean, look, I'm not gonna talk about that anymore. But then the other part of this is cultural. And you know, nobody can say it better than Eric just did. The mission continues, and Eric himself really, I think, started the shift in tone on this. You know, one of the early taglines at Mission Continues was, you know, it's not a charity, it's a challenge. And so I have nothing else to add to that conversation. I mean, you said it well enough. Mm-hmm.